a lot of companies are like, it sounds unapproachable because it is complex, and it's complex for me to explain it. I mean, I understand it, so it's easy in my head. What I'm doing, it all makes sense. But for clients, it's like, okay, I don't understand any of this. How do we measure the outcomes? And because it's still something that's work in progress, and everyone is still trying to figure out what the impact is going to be, and how deep this is gonna change the landscape of marketing. I had clients who have been working with for many years, that managing their SEO for massive clients, and they're starting to notice, and not necessarily panic because we're tackling it, but a lot of clients are like, we're losing clicks from search. But that's because now a lot of the answers are given by Google. So you don't really need to scroll down and look for the info. Google will give it to you. It will show what the source is. It's important to be that source, of course, because if the user is then looking for further information, you want to be the authority that Gemini or whatever is using. The point is that if you're too good at it, you're going to lose search traffic, and that's what's happening for a lot of brands, because the answers are just in Google. They don't need to click on any website.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by Focus-Biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is Anthony Neal Macri. He operates in two worlds. One is a CMO of LanguageCheck.ai, helping translation companies, enterprises, and freelance linguists reduce quality risk when using AI. At the same time, he's an independent media-first growth consultant, so working with founders, SaaS companies, and tourism brands who want authority and not just ads. Anthony, so excited to have you on. How you doing today?
Thank you for having me. Great. Thank you. Excited.
Absolutely. It seems like you're quite busy. You're in a lot of worlds, but they're all related to each other. Do you mind telling us more about your journey, how you even got into what you're doing today?
Well, my career started in the strangest of places on the internet. My career started at ashleymadison.com, the infamous. I was director of digital marketing for that brand. I think remembers the scandal. And before that, we used very interesting marketing campaigns and stunts to get the brand out there. That was my first step into what was, I guess, digital marketing, but also the alternative ways of newsjacking and attention jacking, the attention economy. I think we were one of the first few brands that actually were doing it aggressively, successfully, I dare say, because other brands started kind of looking at us and be like, these people are crazy, but whatever they're doing, it's working. Because when you have a brand that news media and ads network don't want to touch you, you have to find ways to get media to talk about you, and to talk about you, then generally to be angry, enraged, offended, all the opposite of the things that somebody would expect from an advertising campaign. That's where my career started. Then over the years, I worked for a number of different startups, dating companies, SaaS businesses. I've been involved in what has been, I guess, the development of digital marketing for the past few years. Now, as you said, I'm the CMO of LanguageCheck.ai. I think it's an interesting, timely startup that I started working for. I've been deeply interested in this company since the beginning, because one of the things that we see happening in the industry in general, in the digital world, is a lot of jobs are either being replaced, or there's a fear that they will be. And one of the I guess the fields or the worlds that's been most impacted by this, I guess the quickest, the fastest, has been the localization industry and translation industry, which with the large language models, the fear has been, okay, well, translators are no longer useful. We don't need them anymore. What LanguageCheck.ai does instead is it's a security, a QA layer that puts humans, translators, in control of what the translations are. And this is extremely important because we've seen it in many, many, many fields where translations at scale, small meaning drift or little change, can have massive impacts from a liability perspective, financial perspective. From a medical perspective, it can mean that somebody could die because something gets translated wrong. And we've seen it also in the marketing world, where companies that went global, they started translating at scale their advertising campaigns. And, maybe it sounds great in the US, like KFC with, I think it was finger licking good, and China was bite your fingers off. Not sure that translates really well. The advertising agencies probably get fired for that. But I mean, that's less important. Nobody has died. And hopefully nobody bit their fingers off to enjoy KFC in that case. But it's still not great. And what we're discovering in this company is that while LLMs, large language models, are incredible at checking themselves for translations, they're not as great at actually generating the translations because humans are much better, if the best, I would say, in actually capturing the meaning and being able to translate it, which is not something that AI will be able to do, which translates well also into the other fields of the other engagements as a private consultant for other clients. One of the things that I talk about very often with them is, they ask me, will AI replace my job or any job? And my answer is generally the same. Creativity and inspiration is not something that machines will be able to reproduce. So as long as you are capable of producing quality content that's not the usual slop, that's predictable, that everybody has, I think you have an incredible chance surviving it, and not just surviving it, but actually, doing incredible things in this climate in the next few years. And I say that because more we move into automating and AI into the processes in companies, and I'm helping companies integrate different models and different agents into their workflow. What we're noticing is actually that the human in the loop is more necessary than ever. That's what makes a difference. So when people ask me, will AI take my job? The answer is generally no, but run and learn everything you can about all the models. That's how you keep your ass safe, I would say.
Right. And especially in a world, digital marketing evolves very quickly and even more so over the more recent years. But now AI has fast tracked some of those changes and, threats to some jobs. But I agree, it's an incredible tool. And if we can pivot and try to use it in the right way, it can be a fantastic addition to any company or workflow, but it has to be done right.
Yeah, it has to be measured. Also, as I said before, human in the loop. It's ultimately it's the way it gets administered that will make the difference. Because I can create an agent for a company to manage their inbound chats. That's something that can probably be done in like a couple of days worth of work, 3 days. But are you trusting it to actually do all of that while you're not checking what's going on? And it's not necessarily because it will do something bad. It's because the difference will be all these models will start sounding all the same, and people will actually start realizing that they're not really talking to a human. And that sort of like dehumanizing experience will actually not be necessarily something you want to associate your brand with. I think as we've seen different trends online with the digital world, there is initial adoption, which is aggressive, and then there is a step back where companies will be like, "Hey, we don't do that," and all people will run and be like, "Oh my God, they have humans." I'm not necessarily saying that this will happen. I'm saying that now we're just seeing sort of like this super quick adoption, and I'm helping companies figure out where it's useful, where it's not, where it's worth it. Because in some cases, there's companies that are spending so much on AI models and agents, realistically speaking, doesn't really have an impact. It's just cool to say our company, but your company, that's just dumb. And like, it's not making you cooler, it's just making you annoying. Because if before it was
Right.
1, 2, 3 step, now there is just some dumb agent that's asking you 17 questions that are complete useless to what you were trying to do. And the client is just going to get angrier. So as I said, I think this is a very interesting time for businesses and marketers particularly, but in general, I think for everyone. And one of the jokes I often make, I think the jobs that will probably go faster, not necessarily that they will disappear, but if I was a middle management sort of um, employee or position, I would feel that I would be probably the block that can probably go fastest. And I say this often because I'm like, oh, Cindy, she makes great muffins and she's the assistant to the CEO, note taking, prioritizing. Her muffins are great. The problem is that AI can do her job in 7 minutes instead of 8 hours. It doesn't mean that Cindy has become useless or that she's no longer needs to be used in the company. It just means that her position and her skill set has to be used differently. Where before, maybe 70% of the time was note taking and transcribing. Now her job will actually morph into something else. It doesn't necessarily mean she will disappear. It just means that her utility, usefulness in a company has to morph into something new. And that's the
Absolutely.
same for everyone. I think it's the same for everyone.
And it'll be interesting just experiencing this shift in real time because, like you said, it's not about replacing the human, but assigning them to higher value tasks. Because, yes, why wouldn't we want to utilize our workforce the best that we can? But AI, the implementation and even the testing phase of while it's running, you can't just set it and forget it. You really want humans to be reviewing this.
Absolutely. As I said before, for example, LanguageCheck.ai, the company that I'm helping right now, one of the things that's most important in that industry, but just in every industry, it's that human touch, especially in high stakes positions. The human that reviews that personal responsibility and knowing that there's an expert on the other side that's checking to make sure that every layer of that translation before it gets shipped into 34 or 40 languages, who knows? That makes all the difference. But it makes all the difference in all businesses. As I said, maybe marketing doesn't matter; it's just translated poorly, and people won't get what you're trying to communicate. But in other fields, it's absolutely important. And same goes for all the other positions. CEOs before could focus strategically on certain things. Now those I guess that research portion of things or that the daily tasks, those can be all automated. It can be pretty much spat out to boards and investors in 30 seconds. It just means that the human touch will actually become more valuable. And one of the things I said before, the human touch means human relations. Sales position will become more and more important. And face-to-face sort of like customer management, but also public relations, which is something that's from a perspective, public relations, that's interesting because with the evolution of the AI in SEO, and everyone is saying SEO is dead, that connects well to this entire change in the universe of digital. Everyone is saying SEO is dead. Well, it's not really dead. Just it's also changing. Now there's added layers, GEO, and there's AEO. That really doesn't mean that SEO has changed. It just means that it's morphed into something more complex. Of course, if you're doing SEO as if you were in 2006, yes, it's dead, but it's been done for 10 years. You've just been doing it wrong. If you've been doing SEO for the past couple of years, nothing has really changed. It just changes the approach to content and what makes the difference. So, for example, one of the things I do for a lot of my clients, it's more authority based, which means instead of, if in 2006 or 2004, the goal was for me to say, hey, I created 2,000 backlinks this month. Okay, hurrah, that's great, brilliant. This will all work out. Now it's more about a media first sort of approach, which means that if you are into, for example, you're into the B2B SaaS business, that means what you want to do, you want to place yourself as an authority about the product, the company does. That's because the more publications, the more articles, the more expert insights you have published on third-party websites that are trusted, that's what generally makes the difference. So it hasn't really changed. It just became smarter. If you were looking at stuff in keywords and optimizing a few landing pages, praying Jesus, that's not going to work anymore. But if you're working with the current framework, then AEO and GEO, it's virtually the same as SEO. SEO is just the fundamentals of how pages are built and how the internet is organized ultimately. And those are just add-ons that are adding complexities and keep people like me very busy.
Right, because everyone else is, either trying to add AI as, this sort of buzzword, or they saw something about AEO and that the fact that SEO is dead, they're, quick rushing to find out what AEO is and how do I get Claude, Gemini, or ChatGPT to recommend my business. But you're right,
To
it just kind of
index.
takes a different approach, but still founded in a lot of the same principles.
For sure. Like a few hours ago, I was actually working on a client brief, and without going too much into details of what they do, they're based in Canada. They're interested. It's B2B. They sell equipment to other businesses that's in the med care sort of industry, and they were like, "We want to target these keywords," but I was like, "Okay, these are keywords that a machine spits out. They're not human. It's not how a human there's no human intent in any of these keywords. I mean, sure, okay, we can, but there's zero human intent in what you're doing. And when I explain to them, I'm like, okay, when people are looking for this type of thing, what do you think they're looking for? And that's when the conversation got interesting, because they were like, what's the ROI? For example, they're like, oh, they search, what's the ROI on this piece of equipment? I was like, okay, that's a question. That's somebody that's looking at, that's typing that question. Number one is very interested in the product, because it's really looking at how to make money back. There's high intent. Before it was a lot easier because it was just a bunch of keywords that you spit out and the client would be like, okay, great, this works, or marketing teams. Now it's more about, it's about understanding that there's an actual computer out there that's understanding what language, what you mean as a marketer, but also what the user that's looking for things is looking for. The two worlds meet and the content reflects that, then it's not an issue at all. The SEO and all the other cool things all work well together. It's not as complex.
And just being forward looking, what do you see coming down the pipeline as the biggest change or improvement, disruption within AI is going to be in the next year or two?
Well, I think a lot of the processes, as I said before, from a marketing perspective, but also from a management of the company perspective, a lot of the small little, things that make up the daily routine of most employees, most executives, and most managers will be automated. Will, I think, not necessarily disappear, because they'll still be there. There just won't be things that you open your laptop in the morning, you're like, I got to do this. It'll already be done for you. So it's more about kind of a shift in what's important and where the human is actually central to the job, to the task. The other thing, from a marketing perspective, I think there's going to be an influx of garbage ads. From a creative design perspective, I already see brands that are using this AI models that talk great. I think technology is brilliant. Love it. Would I use it from a brand? Probably not. Depends. There is a use for everything. And I think a lot of agencies are exaggerating. A lot of companies are losing control over this garbage. There will be a pullback on that. I think ultimately what we're going to see a lot of is, before social media was very polished, the editing was so important. I think now we're going to see a step back where authenticity will actually almost become fashionable. Like, if something looks homemade with edits that look not necessarily amateur, but edits that look done by a human, and the authenticity is palpable, meaning it's humans, their expressions, the way they talk, what they say, even the imperfections. I think that will make a massive difference in how brands actually market themselves and the way the user will perceive them. That's definitely something I see on the horizon. And then from an SEO perspective, AEO, GEO, a lot of companies, I think I would say, and I saw that stat somewhere, but I can't remember where, I think it's only about 10-15% of companies that are even considering these three things part of their business, and other changing. I think we're going to see in the next couple of years a massive increase in companies looking to get on board with this. Most of them will have fallen behind on this, which means pretty much optimizing content. Because a lot of companies have thousands and thousands of pages, landing pages, the legacy pages they've created over the years. And maybe at a certain point they did work well, they did index, maybe they're still receiving traffic. The point is that there is other companies, other pages that are actually optimizing aggressively, and they will be taken over. What will happen? It will be people like me will show up in companies. They'll be like, we have 5,000 landing pages. What do we do? We will do whatever we have to do, but the ones that will come late in the game will have to spend a lot more, and it will take a lot more work to end up being indexed by AI, whether it's locally, nationally, internationally. And of course, large companies, large enterprises are already spending massive amounts of money in content and optimization to make sure that they don't lose their position.
Absolutely. Especially with technology evolving so fast, specifically AI, it's really important for us to be forward thinking and just understand what's coming down the road, what to expect. And that way we can pivot and position ourselves in the right way. And like you said, not be that company that's left behind or feeling like we're trying to catch up.
For sure. And I think also a lot of the not necessarily fear, the unknown is that just because this world looks complex, a lot of companies are like, it sounds unapproachable because it is complex, and it's complex for me to explain it. I mean, I understand it, so it's easy in my head. What I'm doing, it all makes sense. But for clients, it's like, okay, I don't understand any of this. How do we measure the outcomes? And because it's still something that's work in progress, and everyone is still trying to figure out what the impact is going to be, and how deep this is going to, change the landscape of marketing. I had clients who have, been working with for many years, that managing their SEO for massive clients, and they're starting to notice, and not necessarily panic because we're tackling it, but a lot of clients are like, we're losing some clicks from search. But that's because now a lot of the answers are given by Google, so you don't really need to scroll down and look for the info. Google will give it to you. It will show what the source is. It's important to be that source, of course, because if the user is then looking for further information, you want to be the authority that Gemini or whatever is using. The point is that if you're too good at it, you're going to lose search traffic, and that's what's happening for a lot of brands, because the answers are, they're just in Google. They don't need to click on any website.
Right, absolutely. A lot of great insight here. Anthony, we're going to have a couple more questions
Sure.
as we're wrapping up the show here. Right now, I wanted to share our new offer through our lead magnet. This is the Growth Engine Framework. This is a resource I put together for my 10 plus years experience as an entrepreneur and helping other businesses with their marketing and growth strategies. If you're looking to attract, nurture, convert, and amplify your business, check out the links available down below to get your Growth Engine Blueprint. And Anthony, wanted to ask you, where can people find you and get connected with you and your companies online?
Well, I would Anthony Nealmacri.com, and of course you can find me on LinkedIn. And the latest project I'm working on is LanguageCheck.ai. But
Wonderful.
if
And
you
we'll have
want, I can leave you the links. You can have them on screen later, I guess.
perfect. Yep. We will have those available so everyone can get connected with Anthony here. 2026, we're just kind of about to wrap up quarter one. You have a lot of projects, work on your plate. Lot of initiatives going on, but is there anything that you're most excited about for 2026?
I think most excited. I want to see through what's going to happen with from a creative perspective, because a lot of the marketing I do for a lot of companies, it's creative stuff. Event stunts, marketing campaigns. Um, the debate is whether AI will become always better, and it will be able to compete with human creation, human inspiration. And I think that's where I'm excited to see where it goes. Maybe it will. Maybe I don't think it will. But prove me wrong.
Right. Who knows? Things are changing pretty fast, and if we're using any benchmark, I think Will Smith eating spaghetti is a great example of where even AI video generation started and where it's
Of
gone
course.
now.
Of
So
course.
that's incredible, and to see where it has gone with design, with copy, with
Yeah,
website coding, wow! It's like
for
another
sure.
field,
For
is
sure.
disrupted in a sense, but all of your insight, your experience, this isn't something we should be fearing. We should almost embrace this, and
Of
it's
course.
something we just need to learn to work with.
Of course. And I think, as I said before, creativity, it's not something that can can be engineered. And what I mean by that is, even if I can get Will Smith to jump on a unicorn, I don't know, go save a bunch of puppies, that's still a human that's giving the prompt to make that happen. It's not auto-generating itself into a universe where the human is still very central to the creation process. From my perspective, when it comes to marketing and advertising, humans are still the engine that comes up with this crazy stuff. And as I told you before, working for AshleyMadison.com, it was humans that came up with these absolutely absurd ideas that turned out to be genius. I don't personally think that ChatGPT or any other sort of models or artificial intelligence can do that. To offend people, enrage people, inspire people, make people laugh. I think those are all things that are still very human centric. AI can help us achieve them faster, which means that before I had to spend $20,000 in a studio, now I can do it with like 6, 7 prompts and a $20 subscription.
It is crazy times we're living in. What an experience. It is truly incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you again for coming onto the podcast and
Thank you.
sharing your journey and your tips and tricks.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.